Today, we're diving into the most common mistakes new cannabis growers make and how to avoid them. From overcrowding your grow space to ignoring your plant's environmental needs. Stick around and let us help you get set up for success. Hey, but before we do, today's video is brought to you by Real Grow Lab. If you want to connect with the best growers from all over the world, get tips and tricks on how to grow the dankest plants possible, and not have to worry about the censorship we get from YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. Go check out realgrowlab.com. Get all kinds of great Grow Talk Q&A. Plus, see all the stuff YouTube won't let me show you in these videos. Sign up and join our growing community over at realgrowlab.com. Or download the app at the Apple or Android App Store. Now let's get back to today's video. Come on, Hi C, you ready to jump into it?
I am. As a kind of new grower myself, sure. I'm falling victim to some of these, I have to admit. So
sure.
let's jump into the, what do we got? 5 very common mistakes new growers make.
Yeah, come on, these were easy. I got the first one if you want.
Yeah, let's jump into the first one. What is it?
Overcrowding, putting too many plants in too little of a space. It's so exciting. You get your little 2x4, your 4x4 grow tent. All of a sudden, you're popping 10 packs of seeds. You want to just grow. And man, it's a big mistake to overcrowd. Too many plants in too little of a space is going to cause problems.
So what are the problems that causes?
First off, once the plants are touching each other, you start making microclimates where one leaf is laying on top of a leaf. It's not the same temperature and humidity in that little area that it is, where your thermostat's at. So those microclimates really make environment susceptible for powdery mildew, bud molds, those type of things.
And that's, I'm assuming, because of poor air circulation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You want circulation. You also have to, we call it BPD. You have to have the right temperature and humidity so the plants can off gas a little bit so they can breathe.
So I know when you were teaching me how to prune plants, you were like, hey, we want to make sure these leaves aren't overcrowding each other, aren't touching each other. It's kind of the same thing for one plant when you're pruning it as it is when you've got plants sitting next to each other.
Yeah, plants are alive. I like to think that they they can feel things and notice and sense things. When they're jammed really close together, they grow different than when they're given a lot of space.
Okay, and you like to grow those kind of short, bushy plants anyways.
Sure.
So they need a little bit extra space, I assume.
Yes, and I spread them out. I actually grow some that are a little bit bigger, and I do spread them out. I make sure I use bamboo stakes so I don't get those microclimates, so I don't have leaves laying all on top of each other and creating that perfect environment for a pathogen to get a foothold. Okay. Always want nice circulation going.
So give me a rule of thumb. I got a 4x4 tent, hypothetically, 4 square feet. How many plants can I fit in there comfortably?
Go with 4 to start off with. You can always flower them up really early within a few weeks, but play around with 4. You might decide the next time you want to do one giant one and just let it grow like crazy. But I think if you don't veg for too long, 1 per square foot, it's tight. But if you're not growing giant plants, you're going 3 or 5 gallons or something in the real buckets. Yeah, give that a go. Good. That's crowded though. It's as crowded as I would go.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Number 2 on the most common mistakes new growers make.
Yeah. Environment, man. Not considering your growing environment. And I will say the first thing that everybody does consider regarding environment is lighting. We all know that you have to get a bright light in there. So everybody, a lot of people, at least they'll ask the right questions. They'll get that part right because there is different amounts of light for different stages of growth. But the most important thing with environment is temperature and humidity. Those are the things that are changing. If you don't have those dialed in, we talk about a plant respires. It brings water up from its roots and then it lets the oxygen out through its leaves. It can't do that if it's totally under pressure. Just the same way we can't perspire correctly if it's 90% humidity. So there's an ideal performance range for plants, and keeping them in that ideal range is where they're going to thrive. We don't want plants to do anything but thrive, because as soon as they slow down, that's an opportunity for pathogens to come on in and really destroy our harvest.
It's funny that you mention it. Lights were the thing that I was most concerned about my first couple of growers. I never even considered the fact that the plant might need the proper humidity and temperature to thrive.
What's the difference between those two? You can see light.
Oh, okay, yeah.
You can see it. When it comes to temperature and humidity, it's, maybe you feel it, maybe you sense it. Not if you just open a window of the tent. You're not really getting tuned to it, so...
Okay, and you kind of touched on this one earlier. You were talking about airflow.
Yeah.
Why is airflow so important when it comes to growing?
Because we're trying to simulate outside. And even outside, there's a little wind that goes on. As soon as you get stagnant air, no airflow, it makes it perfect. We were talking about that leaf laying on another leaf or those buds touching each other. Think about how dense a bud is. It's a dense piece of plant material, hunk of plant material. It is not hard for, it's very ripe for something like bud mold to get in there. And then, man, there's nothing, I don't know if there's anything worse. Probably a couple things worse. But then growing 100 days, really working at a harvest and then opening it up to go, to go trim it and finding out it's loaded with bud mold. I've been there, all right, man. It hurts. It hurts. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So number 3 most common problem, and I actually killed a plant because I didn't understand this one, and then I didn't feel so bad because you told me lots of people run into this.
It's the easiest thing. Overwatering, I like to call it overloving the plant. What do we know about plants? They need fertilizer. When we go to buy our fertilizer from the store, what do they tell us? There's 20 bottles you can get. Each one does something awesome. So as soon as you have a problem, you go to the fertilizer, you go to the grocery store and they go, put this on there. And it might be something good, but when you water it in, you're drowning those roots. The bacteria we're talking about in recharge or in general, they're aerobic bacteria. If you'll ever hear people talk about soil, you don't want your soil to go anaerobic. The anaerobic microbes are the pathogens. I'm generalizing for the most part. The aerobic microbes are the ones that you want in your soil.
And you said you're talking about bacteria. You mean beneficial bacteria?
Beneficial bacteria, beneficial fungi. They all need air to live. A little bit of the right amount of air to water ratio. The exact same thing as your plant roots.
Well, for me, my plant was looking kind of wimpy, and my brain just said, well, plants need water, so add more water, and I ended up killing.
Yeah.
So
drowning, not just killing, drowning. Yeah. And that's a bad way to go.
Okay, so to avoid drowning, what's your, hack for watering your plants?
I don't know, it's a hack. It's a rule of thumb, and that is just understand what a plant feels like saturated. If you have a 3-gallon plant, 5-gallon plant, go lift it up. Go saturate it, wait till the water comes out the bottom drain holes, then lift it up. It's going to be heavy. And then wait till it goes about half that weight. You don't have to go get a scale or anything. It's a rule of thumb, but it's got to be at least half that weight. It has to have lost at least half of its weight before you should consider rewatering it.
Okay, and you say at least. I know that in nature, plants don't get like the exact amount of water all the time. They have dry back, and then they have floods, and then it's okay if you're not exact, right?
Correct. Okay. They also have thousands and thousands of gallons of soil to grab from,
That's true too. So I guess there's a little bit of leeway in nature that we don't really have if we're growing.
There's a lot of leeway. There is. You don't have to have this perfect. You just have to have it within range.
Okay, so that leads us to the tip that I wanted to talk about on this one, because recently you hooked me up with some real buckets, and they keep my water exactly where it needs to be. SIP bucket systems.
Yeah, sub-irrigated planter. The reason that is because we use the right media. We're not using a really heavy media like compost rich or anything like that. We're using pure cocoa coir. And cocoa coir, the reason it's so popular with growers is because it will hold a lot of air even when you make the mistake of overwatering it. So it's super forgiving. We love cocoa.
And those SIP buckets, I just keep my reservoir full, and the float valve that you have in there makes sure that my 2 other buckets that my plants are in, they get the exact amount of water.
Yeah, my dad was a plumber, and he taught me way back in the day that water seeks its own level. So by putting a float valve in the bottom of one of these buckets and then just attaching it to as many buckets as I want, I get a little bit of water in there by adjusting that float valve. Maybe an inch of water. The cocoa core sits in there maybe a half an inch, and then it wicks through capillary action. As it wicks, that cocoa holds so much air. Just the way it's constructed, it holds so much air that it's almost impossible to overwater cocoa.
Yeah, I love it. Ever since I started using the real buckets, I've never worried about over or underwatering my plants.
Right on.
All right, next one, nutrients. Using the wrong nutrients at the wrong time. This was the most intimidating thing for me when I got into growing, because nutrient schedules are complicated and they scare the crap out of me.
Yeah, it can be a mistake. Cannabis needs different nutrients at different time. They talk about the vegetative stage or the growth stage. Man, you want a lot of nitrogen there. You want nitrogen to be the macronutrient, or the get that in the most proportion. As you get in the flower, you're not generating just huge growth anymore. You're flowering. So you need more phosphorus. You need a right amount of potassium, but specifically you need less nitrogen, or else you'll get really leafy green bud. And I think you know what that tastes like, right?
Hay kind of.
No, the
like
hay
grass?
like grass. The hay is from not drying it properly and letting that plant material break down. But yeah, having that in your flowers just really messes with the taste.
Okay, so I know that when I first started growing, a lot of my like teenage friends were just go get some Miracle Grow or Fresh Frog Farm, something like that.
Happy Frog is good stuff, man. Yeah,
but they're a lot of these kind of one part.
Yeah,
it's all just the same nutrients across the board.
Yeah, like you'll see like lawn fertilizer a lot of times at 20-20-20, and it's actually a real problem because a lot of that just runs off into the watershed. But yeah, balanced fertilizers, you don't need them. You don't need them with cannabis anyhow. It's important that you taper off the nitrogen is the most important thing in flowering.
Okay, and then just a kind of hack and a plug for grow dots.
Hey.
I grow with grow dots because I don't even have to worry about is my plant getting the right nutrients at the right time. Grow dots make sure that they do.
Yeah, we blended I don't know if it's a secret, you might yell at me. We took different time release fertilizers and we blended them, so one will run out at the end of vegetative growth, and then the flowering will start picking up, and that's the secret to grow dots is a blend.
So it does that work for you. It gets the right nutrients at the right time.
Yes.
Okay, this last one, I've heard you say you don't worry about it, but until I understood it, I was in a pretty big danger zone, and I've known a lot of growers that have faced things like nutrient lockout and all kinds of problems. pH levels. Help me understand that.
All right, let's do it. I diminish the importance of pH. It is very important. It just happens to be very easy to get under control, I'll say.
Okay.
And that is that plants can only absorb, or roots can only absorb nutrients at a very specific pH level. I made you get this chart up again. And you can see there, what is it, between 6 and 7 different nutrients are absorbed at different ranges, I guess. It makes some are easier to absorb at certain pHs. Some get completely locked out. So there's no doubt about it. pH is absolutely important. It's just not important on the top inch of your soil. You know, it's important where the soil meets the plant roots. That's where the nutrients are exchanged. They call that the rhizosphere. The rhizosphere is like a 20th of an inch, just the tiniest little, that's the port where the nutrient is exchanged. That's where the pH has to be right. And lucky for us, if we use soil microbes, like the ones in Recharge, they regulate their own pH. They're able to secrete acids. They're able to regulate their own pH at the rhizosphere, at the root zone. So they're fixers when they need to be. We'll make it happen. We'll make this transaction happen at the root zone.
Okay, so I'm looking at this chart and I'm seeing that if my pH is too high, it's not going to be able to absorb iron. It's not going to be able to absorb copper and zinc. But if my pH is too low, I might not get phosphorus. I might not get magnesium. So you're saying keep it between that 6 and 7, maybe 6.5. and that'll help my plant get all those nutrients. But if I don't have at my root zone, if I don't have that 6.5, you're saying something like microbes, soil microbes help get it there.
They're a buffer. They're making the transactions. Don't forget, soil microbes need the sugars from the plant. That's a transaction they're making, symbiosis. The microbes have nutrients. They've been able to break down or hold nutrients. They're mobile. They can deliver them to the rhizosphere. And then they're not doing this for their, whatever, because they're nice microbes. They're doing this so that they can make a transaction and get this sugar. Well, I don't know if you've ever made a transaction that you really wanted. You make it easy, right?
Okay, so assuming that I'm one of the viewers that just says, oh, Scott's plug and recharge again, and I don't buy recharge, and I try to do it the hard way, there are ways to kind of measure my water, find out where it's at, and then adjust my water. If I want to do things the hard way, how does that work?
If you're using, I would say if you're using an inert media like rock wool, if you're not using microbes, so that you can see there's very specific pH ranges that nutrients are going to get absorbed by. So I got to test it. I have to monitor and control it. You're talking to a former deep water culture guy here that used no media whatsoever. His water was the media. So I would have a pH monitor controller from the fish store, from the aquarium store. I would have dosers that would be, in pH up and pH down with peristaltic pumps that would pump pre-measured amounts. It looked like something you'd see at an emergency room.
Oh, okay. I think I'm just going to stick with recharge.
It was, I felt really silly when I got to Colorado and somebody told me, hey, just use Coco Core. Go get some 10-gallon Smart Pots, Coco Core. They started me with Canna A and B. Shout out, good liquid nutrient. And man, that's how I started, and I felt silly about having all this water and aquarium pumps and air stones and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't have to be complicated. Hey, but that's just my 2 cents on the matter. What about you? What's the biggest mistake you've made in your grow? Let me know in the comments. And if you like this video, please hit that like button, smash that subscribe button, and check out the other couple videos YouTube's recommending. I think you like them.